Wilco, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to Architect Tomorrow. Great to have you.
Yeah, great. Hi, so I'm Wilco.
Yep.
I'm 42, living in the Netherlands because that's where we are in Amsterdam today. I'm only since 14 months completely into sustainability, so I've been IT for more than 20 years. I'm currently a principal lead for High-Tech Innovators, where my focus is on green software engineering and software engineering. And since last year we started doing meetups in the Netherlands for the Green Software Foundation. We've done last year 7 meetups, also collaborations in 8 months, which is kind of crazy. We've built a community within the meetup group from nothing to now almost 700 members. So that's it's really cool. That's also how I know the host of today of the Voxxed Amsterdam, Turk. He's also very a green IT advocate, so that's really cool. That's also probably the reason why we're here. You're probably gonna speak today. We also try to not only preach to our own choir, or how do you say that, but that we also go to places where maybe people not really that the focus point was sustainability.
It's a sidetrack topic, right?
Yes,
being a main,
but really to bring more people aboard about creating awareness that this is an important topic, that we can do a lot in IT, and
Well, thanks to you and Co for making the space for the conversation. I'm looking forward to talking later. So so we're at Vox Days today, and my talk is going to be talking about the Tech Carbon Standard, which is something we launched just over a year ago. Some of our client work with that, and then specifically how developers, because of course this conference is mostly about developers today, can use that to kind of understand where does software make real world impact. So that's both in the upstream, the kind of purchasing of services and hardware, the operational, the kind of running of servers and cloud services, and then downstream, like the software we create, what impacts does that digital product have on the world? So, I'm going to be throwing in some other people's quotes. So I've got some quotes from Mark Butcher. Hopefully he doesn't mind. I
love Mark. So.
Yeah, and hopefully Mark and I are pretty good friends. He'll be right with that. Yeah. I'm also throwing in some things that David from Leaf Cloud spoke to me about yesterday, and I'll probably be mentioning some of the Building Green Software book by Anne and the 2 Sarahs as well. I've got a copy with it. I might well sort of say,
nice.
Wave it at the audience and recommend it. So it's going to be good. It's I think one of the first times I think I've spoken about this topic in Amsterdam, at least. I think I spoke about the topic in Vienna a couple of years ago. So it's nice to be back in Europe talking about it. Other than the meetup community, what are you doing at High-Tech Innovators? What's the sort of main sustainable tech thing that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, not only because from a sales perspective, but we really try to push the boundaries of green IT, green software, and green coding. Yeah. So when I started a year ago, the first things that I really saw that there was a lot of research, more than a decade of research. Also, the first professors that I talked to explained that. And mainly the hard topic is, or the difficult topic is, the relationship between energy efficiency or energy consuming versus compute efficiency. That there's not always a direct relationship, and that's very complex, especially with CPUs.
Right.
So last year I had 2 different topics that I really focused on. One is creating a tool that can, on a high time resolutions of milliseconds, can get the utilization per core while your software is running in a benchmark, or if you just do debugging it, that kind of stuff. And it gave a very better insight where in your code, especially if you have trace logs on your code going on with OpenTelemetry, that you also can bring it back. And it's also, not every code line is the same, right? So some code line can be a few nanoseconds, but also one code line can actually push your CPU to 100% for an hour, so not every code line is the same. That's kind of also where the idea of equal came from when I named the tool. Then I created on that concept a workshop. Eventually in December I came to the conclusion that if you take a completely abstract theoretical model, so could you predict the micro operations of your high level code, Java, Python, .NET, and if you would do that with Gen AI, although Gen AI is a footprint, but still in this case, while development and all the numbers I checked it, it is kind of still okay. Can you predict where the heavy compute is, where the energy bandwidth in your code is, and also where the underutilization is? And I created some ideas and concepts around that. That's also part of the workshops that I already also gave to IT companies in the Netherlands. And then we now taking that further. So I'm now since January. Since I'm now principal lead, I'm also building a green team. So Frank of our team, he joined us a month ago, but I'm also still in the hiring process of a few more. We have people on board who are expert in their field. So this can be like a Java developer or a UI UX designer or a product owner, someone who wants to be top in their field but wants to do it in a sustainable way. And it doesn't always have to be in this case around climate change, but it can also be about social impact.
Right.
The broader perspective of sustainability.
Yeah.
And now, we're building mainly a demo environment for a footprint scan that kind of combines all the tools that are out there. Okay. So there are a lot of open source tools, so like Cardamom, like the Power Letrix, and the other tools of the green coding solutions from the people in Berlin. Yeah. And there are many other tools that are out there. We try to combine them and bring them in a solution so we can start helping companies to actually use those tools in their operational, so in the DevOps teams, mainly in their CI/CD pipelines, because I think that is a great point to start. Yeah. So that's really where personally and as a team, as a company, we're really focusing on, and I'm really passionate about.
We should definitely talk about that offline, because like the whole point of the Tech Carbon Standard wasn't just to sort of define and create a taxonomy, it's also to signpost to open source tools. So we've got some updates coming around, particularly around footprinting of assets and stuff like that, because of the work we've done. But I think what would be really useful is to signpost people to the other open source projects like Cardamom and other things that are out there. Yeah. But I wanted to pick up on a couple of things you talked about just there as well. Like one is, and this is going to be in my talk later, is like not all code is important to optimize. Like, I make a big push for thinking about your open source upstream dependencies. Like, how efficient are they? Yeah. Could you contribute back to the open source project, make that more efficient? Because actually, that doesn't just make your code better.
It's kind of the embodied carbon in software, your libraries and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And then, great, you said embodied carbon, because you also touched on just then this conflict sometimes we have between developer productivity and machine productivity, and being mindful of like how much are you doing in the build versus the run. So like design time versus run time. Overly optimizing in design time, does it pay back? The efforts, and that's something that I don't think people are thinking about. They're coming from the best interests at heart, right? They want to kind of optimize software, they want to make it better, but they don't think about maybe if I spend so much longer optimizing something and maybe using lots of Gen AI and all that sort of stuff, actually the embodied impact is quite significant. So I think that embodied impact is one of the things I'll be talking a bit more about today.
So, and also I'm going to give a few talks in the next few months, and it's really focused on build to last. Okay. And so
the true definition of sustainability, right? Creating sustainable software that actually lasts.
Build to last with the least amount of negative impact. That's kind of it. Yeah. So even with software, you can have a focus point on energy and emissions and CO2. Yeah. But we also have an influence on the temperature of devices. Right. So this can even be in the cloud, although we have there a collective responsibility. You cannot influence the temperature on your own of a certain server through virtual layers. Yeah. But mobile devices, for instance, in the Netherlands, we have a lot of solar panels on rooftops of people's homes. People, if they do it on the right moment, they can charge their batteries with green energy or even have a battery in their home. Yeah. But if we use that energy more, that would be great. But if we do that and we overheat the devices and it has a negative impact on the device or on the battery, it shortens the lifetime. I think a lot of researchers and companies in France, because that is, I think, in that country the main focus above like the electricity, they have great examples, and those I try to follow. And there's also questions like, if you build like a monolith, I kind of compare it with a pyramid, like survived like a really long time. But then the question often is, but we want eventually microservices back to software again because of scalability. But then I always kind of question, and this is something that I really started realizing a few months ago. A lot of people focus on the hotspots, but kind of where the key point in this is, especially with temperature, is the underutilization, the idle time, the often forgotten thing. So that is,
because servers aren't great at throttling down, right? A lot of the time they're efficient at like kind of 80% sort of ish range, but you take away the load and they're still chewing, probably the 60% of the energy, 40% of the energy that they would be, anyway. So that kind of idle time thing is quite interesting. And I guess The other thing to think about, I suppose, and you probably have done this, is like the attributional versus consequential. Like people talk a lot about serverless. In fact, I did an episode on Architect Tomorrow about serverless, and it's great. Like attributionally, you can go, I can say that I'm not running a compute when I'm not running code, but the reality is there's still compute sitting underneath the service.
And the question is that environment really multi-tenant?
Yeah.
So to some degree, like for more, how do you say it, for people at home who temporarily hire something to run software, they're probably in a very crowded server, while maybe for a very big bank or an insurance company, maybe a hyperscaler really saves a full sets of server racks, especially for that bank, because maybe that bank has at a certain time a peak. That means a lot of idle time going on without kind of where then in this case, then the bank or an insurance company maybe say, but that's not our responsibility, and that's that of the cloud, and maybe that is always not fully reported on, because we only report on kilowatt hour and not on idle time often in the reports.
No, that's fair. It's a complex topic, this one.
Yes.
But I think it's good that we're starting to get more people sort of thinking about it. It's becoming more of a mainstream consideration. I think ultimately, I think a lot of people's goal is to see sustainability put on the same level as, say, security in terms of a quality attribute.
I have a fun fact on that.
Okay.
So what you see a lot happening with reporting and CSRD is that boardroom members or people creating the reports say, well, software, it is a mean to eventually do something, but it doesn't materialize, so it doesn't have to end up in the reports. And the fun fact is that kind of now is changed, and then people say, why? Well, it's very simple, because AI, if you hear a general CTO saying like, we only can survive as a company if we use AI, we only can be competitive if we use AI, and you remember that AI to its core, it's just software, it's very smart software, but it's just software, that means software materializes, so it should be reported more on in the reports, and it's also something that should be more on the focus points in the operation of a company.
Well, look, Wilco, it's been great catching up. Good to see you in your native country. It's good to see you in London last year.
I will be in London this year, so I hope
Green
we'll
IO.
see,
Hopefully we'll see you at Green IO and our paths will cross again. But no, thanks, Wilco.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.